Hello, Rick,
Hey, Carlos.
and welcome everyone to yet another episode of Content Labs. We keep insisting on doing these things, but it's always, if anything, we're just having fun chatting about the industry and content. So today we have four topics that we want to cover. Very quick episode. So Google released Gemini last week, and it's interesting what's going on there and what will happen in the future. Something about GPT-4 getting lazy. So I want to hear more about that. And we're going to talk about how to refresh or how to update an article and how not to. And at the end, we're going to help you guys understand the difference between a case study, a white paper, and a blog. There's lots of confusion. People call these things, they're different, and I don't think it's very clear for everybody. So, okay, so well, let's get into it. So, I don't know, Rick, if you saw, but Google announced Gemini, their most powerful AI model yet. So, I know you probably haven't caught up because you were traveling, but I saw the demo. I watched the demo, and this thing is amazing. So the guy starts, with a little post-it note, and he just and so Gemini can identify it as a post-it note, and then he makes a line, and then says Gemini says it's a squiggly line, and then he makes a dot, and he says, "I can see it is a dot." So he can identify many different type of objects, moving objects, in one part of the demo, the guy has, that game with the three cups, and then you hide like a little ball behind one of the cups. So you set up the
Uh-huh.
three cups, and then Gemini says, "Oh, I can see that you want me to guess which cup has the ball." So he moves them around, and Gemini can guess which one where the ball is. So this is pretty impressive.
I know what
Um,
I'm doing tonight.
no, and the other, there was another part to it where somebody tells it, okay, I wanna have a birthday party for my daughter, and then the model asks him, okay, what does she like? And she said, well, she likes animals. And then the model asks, what kind of animals? She likes horses. And then he comes up with a lot of recommendations and visual recommendations in a very, very nice user interface. So it's not a block of text anymore. Like all of us are now getting used to ChatGPT and of course SGE and Bing Chat. They're now a little bit more visual, but the UI of this thing is pretty impressive, pretty amazing. So blew my mind. I think we're getting to what they call general artificial intelligence, and saying that a game changer. Well, we keep saying that AI is a game changer, but things are moving really quick, and the ability of these models, the skills are pretty impressive, quite impressive. So I keep wondering how will content need to evolve to adapt to that new reality. But very interesting. So I'm looking forward to play with it. I think is now being incorporated into BART. Also, they have a nano model that it'll power Gemini in your Android mobiles. So I think they have a large model, a mid-sized model, and a small model, which depends on what kind of computational computing capacity you have available. But they're going to start incorporating to BART. They're incorporating to Android. It'll be incorporated into SGE as well. So we'll see more of it, but pretty impressive. So I'm looking forward to play with it as soon as I can get my hands on it.
Let's back up a quick second. You said he entered in, it asked questions about what his daughter likes, horses, and it came up with recommendations and images. Was it coming up with like products?
No, it was actually coming with ideas about the party, like
Oh, I
what kind
see.
of party to do,
Okay.
right? So yeah, and he said like we like it to be outdoors. So he came up with ideas, right? So with recommendations. So I wonder how kind of products or services are going to be incorporated into it. I assume if you okay, well, these are the ideas for the party, and then you need this kind of setup, and then you need to start asking the model, okay, where can I get that kind of stuff, and it'll come up with recommendations. But it's just how powerful it is. It's just mind blowing. I mean, it makes ChatGPT look like something like already
Oh, it's
old and
bold
outdated.
words.
Yeah. Well, now that we're talking about ChatGPT, so What do you mean it's getting lazy? Well, I saw an article, but what is that? What is going on?
Well, a lot of people have claimed that its performance has declined over the last couple of months, and some have even said that the preview model, which is GPT-4 Turbo, released at Dev Day, is performing worse than GPT-4 original. Um, and I think we've all learned at this point, like GPT has good days and bad days. It really all depends on its understanding of your prompt, right? But the chatter and the reviews elicited a response from OpenAI, and I found one quote from them to be particularly interesting. They said, training models on same data sets produces different personality, writing style, evaluation performance, etc. Um, so what they were saying is, they've trained multiple models with the same exact information
Mm-hmm.
and gotten different results, gotten a
Mm-hmm.
different chat GPT. Um, and I really found that interesting because I think we've all experienced, coming up with a nifty prompt, right? Like this is doing exactly what I want. Then you come back a couple days later and you try to do it again and you don't get the same result. And I was thinking about this, and I think it just cements right now. You mentioned a few minutes ago that AI is progressing really fast, but I think what's progressing faster is our desire to automate everything with it, right? And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Um, and I think this quote really illustrates that, right? You can come up with fantastic prompts that really work well, but you are dependent on the GPT's understanding of that prompt every single time you use it. When you plug it into a new thread, it has no prior context. It doesn't know what it did 2 weeks ago to that same prompt. And what that results in is inconsistencies. So if you've decided to just dive in and create content, to automate the process with AI, and you've come up with some pretty detailed prompts to hit your brand voice, your messaging, your opinions, um, you risk getting something different every time if you're not closely watching it. The same prompt will produce different results. And I think that's very dangerous because we all know consistency in voice and messaging are key in content marketing, right? You can't have conflicting opinions on your websites. You can't have content that reads as though 7 writers with 7 different personalities created it. And you could still very well end up with that, even though you've automated through a prompt in AI. So further evidence that while we may get to automation down the road or some form of it, we're not there yet. Make sure humans are still heavily involved in your content production. It's just not worth the risk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it'll get all these things will get smarter, but we're just in the process of understanding and refining all these things. So,
Mhm.
I mean, because there's so much attention, of course,
There
it's
is.
easy.
And
It's easy.
I'm a huge proponent, Carlos. I like every opportunity I get to jump on ChatGPT and figure out how to make something more efficient or better. I'm all about that. But we just keep the training wheels on.
Yeah.
Like let's not get ahead of ourselves. You do risk results here. You
Yeah.
risk your ranking. You risk your website's credibility. Just be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, we need to keep playing with it and let it evolve. But let's talk about something that sometimes I see some content creators overlook, and is content refreshes, content upgrades. And I'm a big proponent of within your budget or your allocation of resources to your content strategy, a portion should always go to what is called content maintenance, which means keeping your content up to date, and not only that, but also kind of deprecating or decommissioning content that is no longer usable, and always upgrading or refreshing your content. So some people take this very lightly and go just as as far as they go is to refresh the date. So I think, Rick, what do you think? What is the best way to refresh or to update a piece of content, an article? What are best practices?
Well, I think the first best practice is obviously to identify what used to perform and isn't performing as well now as candidates to be refreshed. But when you get to that point, once you have your list, like I think these articles could use a bump, their traffic has declined. Um, Before it goes to a writer, a content manager, a content person working alongside an SEO or a content strategist who knows both sides of the equation should take a real good look at the article and say, if I were to write this today, what would it look like? What are recent developments in this subject matter that aren't addressed in here? There's always, let's start with the standards first, right? Are you citing any studies, any statistics that are now 2 or 3 years old? Maybe a new study has been done. Maybe there's newer information. If so, those links and those statistics need to be updated. And any opinions based on the data that was put in needs to be evaluated. Does this still hold true? Okay, so review all the links. Are we still targeting the right keyword for this? Is the intent still aligned with what our target was? It's actually fairly common that you need to identify a new keyword for your article as the primary target. Make sure that you know what the intent for that keyword target is, and that the article as it's written aligns with it. If not, create some direction for the writer to get it there. Although oftentimes if it's not aligned with intent, it really needs a full rewrite, not a refresh. But then check the news. What has changed in the year and a half, 2 years since this article was first published? And that's a great opportunity to take old content, get it up to date, and add a differentiator compared to other articles that you're competing against, right? If you start talking about more recent developments, be careful to be evergreen. Don't get into anything that's too, in the present and isn't going to be a big deal a month or two from now. But make sure you've got all the current developments in that subject matter accounted for. Determine where they should fit logically. Spell all this out for the writer. Let them know which sections need to be addressed, which ones are okay, what they should add, what they should move. Is this still your business's outlook on the subject? We've flip-flopped several times on AI over the past year as things have developed. So your company's position on the subject matter may have changed. So make sure there's alignment there. So really, it's about, if I wrote it today, what it would look like, and then describe the differences between the current article and your vision of it for the writer to go ahead and implement. But when you get that published and change that date, that article should come across as though it is current as of today, as though it were written today. It's a more economical way to avoid having to rewrite the same article to account for differences in the industry over the last couple of years. Okay, but you've got to get it to current.
Agreed. And get it to current is not just changing the publishing date. We've seen that many times, or just changing the author name, which is even worse because that's somewhat actually deceiving. But or just moving paragraphs here and there. No, you actually have to do the work and figure out, okay, what is my refresh strategy? We should have a refresh checklist, right, or an upgrade checklist. Maybe we should design one, Rick, and then put it out there for people to look at these things. Because you mentioned a few great best practices. Sometimes the images need to be refreshed as well. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you now have a video that you didn't have before, and then you can embed it there. Or you have the links also change. You might, especially if they're external links, you need to check that those pages still exist, right? Because you might be penalized by linking to pages that don't exist, right? So there might create technical SEO problems if you don't update your links as well. So there are many things that need to be taken into account. And again, we're huge proponents of devoting some resources to refreshing or upgrade your content. Okay, so now that we're talking again about content, what are the difference between a white paper, a case study, and a blog post? I mean, they sound different, but I don't think people is very clear of what the differences are. So, from your point of view, from your experience, Rick, what is the difference between one and the other?
Well, I'll explain the difference between a white paper and a case study. Blog post will be pretty much everything that wasn't one of those. Okay, but it's funny. It's amusing how often clients get confused with these things, but they do have a clear definition, and they're very, very valuable parts of your content marketing. So, all right, let's start with a white paper. Okay, a white paper describes a very specific problem in your industry and your business's views on how to solve that problem, which often ends up being your product, your service, your software, whatever the case may be, but not always. It could be simply your philosophy on how to solve this type of problem. But specific problem, your solutions. This isn't something that has to have happened before. It isn't a description of what you did with this other client. That's a case study. Okay, so white paper can be completely hypothetical. It can be philosophical. It'd be, this is what we believe is crowd content. You know, when it comes to this very specific content marketing issue debate, this is our stance on it. This is how we would solve it. You know, so it's not a real world scenario in a sense. I mean, it is. We're describing one, but it didn't actually happen. Case study, on the other hand, is very similar to a white paper, sorry, but it did happen. So a case study describes a problem that a business had. You know, this is what we're experiencing. Here's what we were up against. Here's what we wanted to accomplish. We needed to find a solution. It then describes the solution that was put in place to address that problem, and then finally ends up with the results. So case studies tend to be more data heavy than white papers because we're talking a real problem, a real solution, real results. Odds are you're going to get some data there. But that's what a case study is. Real world. If, you know, Carlos, we could partner with some of our clients to look at ways that they had, you know, scaling up issues. And, you know, what were they experiencing? What did they try? What goals were they setting? What were they up against? And then talk about how our solutions help to address those problems. And then take a look at a 6 months worth of results. And here's where we, you know, this solution got them. That's a case study. You know, it's real. It names the participants. It gets very specific about the problem and the solution and the results. Now, when it comes to articles, that's pretty much everything else. You know, your how-tos, your listicles, even a lot of thought leadership is just an article. But a thought leadership article can be a white paper because a lot of thought leadership is about talking about an industry problem and that thought leader's opinion on it. And odds are you're presenting advice or solutions in that matter. And white papers are all about presenting solutions. So thought leadership can be white paper, but not every white paper is thought leadership. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It totally makes sense. How about ebooks? Where do ebooks fall into all these different categories?
It's that's when you're getting into more of just a length. Ebooks can be on any number of topics, you know, but just more of a long form article that's supported with lots of graphics, more of a presentable, not going to live on a web page as one scroll. So a lot of design involved, but still a narrative, beginning, middle, end. Yeah, like an ebook can be any number of things. You know, you could actually turn, you know, if you go long enough on your white paper, it could be considered an ebook.
Yeah. So, but I
Yeah,
like
so
the
I
definition.
would put ebook between the article and the case study and white paper, right? So it's still just an article, but it's presented in a different format. It's got design factors to it.
Yeah, and it's pretty much anything that you probably wouldn't just put on HTML would be like more likely be a PDF so people can download it because you want
Right.
people to
They're used a
scroll.
lot for lead gen, you know,
Yeah, you
get
don't
an
want.
email capture or something.
Yeah, well, I think that's the extension, right? Case studies, white papers, ebooks are used commonly for sales enablement, right? To support your sales motion. They can be a lead magnet, right? There's a lot of knowledge. There might be a template in them, and then you can use it for your sales motion. Where blogs are not as used as sales enablement. There may be You can use for sales enablement, but more like conversation starters and things like that.
They're
But
top of the funnel.
yeah, they're very top of the funnel, whereas white paper and case studies are more like middle and bottom of the funnel, right?
Depends
People
on
are
who you ask. Some people would put white papers at the top, and I disagree. I can. It's consideration, right? At this point, this is somebody wanting to know about you and your
yeah,
solutions and your idea.
yeah.
Your opinion as a business. That's consideration phase. It's mid funnel.
Okay. Well, I hope this helps people understand the difference between these types of assets, these types of content, and I hope you all enjoy this episode. Short and sweet. And until next time, thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Carlos. We'll see you next week.